Questions about that? No? Okay. So let's talk about articulations. Okay? Alright. We could classify them two different ways. Either by how they move or what they're made out of. Okay. We could do it by mobility, how well they can move. They might not move at all, just fuse together. These are called synarthroses. These are immovable, like the skull bones, the sutures that are located in your skull bones. Then we have amphiarthroses, and these are slightly movable. A good example of this is your intervertebral joints, like our skeleton here. One vertebra and a second vertebra. You got that disc in there, which is made up of what? What kind of cartilage? Ooh, you did some study, right? Fibrocartilage, right? But when you have two bones like that on a vertebrae, they don't move that much. They might only move like this. That's it, very little. But when you put a bunch of bones together, that's what's making it look like you're moving a lot. But when you put only one-to-one joint, it's only moving very little. Does that make sense? It's when you put a bunch of them together, that's what's making it look like you have a very flexible back. But they don't move that much when you just deal with just one joint. But mostly in our body, we have very freely movable joints, and they're called synovial joints, also known as diarthroses. These are your shoulder joints, your hip joints, your finger joints. All right, these are mostly what's in your body, but we do have the other ones also. And this is just showing you, you can do this on your own, but these are showing you, like, here's the synarthroses. These are the examples that we have, and then we have subtypes of these, like a gomphosis is basically where your tooth goes into your jaw. That's immovable. The only way to remove it is for them to, pull it straight out with some kind of metal instrument, right? So that's what those are. Okay, and then here's a couple of amphiarthroses, and the diarthrosis is really only the synovial, but I'll talk about the synovial joints in a moment. So these are fibrous joints, right? We're going to see fibers found in where the tooth is or in between where the skull bones are. All right, these are immovable. We could also have cartilaginous joints where we have some cartilage in between the vertebrae, as I just said. We could also have cartilage that's found between the ribs and the sternum, which is your chest plate. So we have this cartilage that's over here, that's connecting bones to bones over here. And then we have bony joints, the gap between the two bones when we deal with fetuses. And we'll talk about these. These are actually called fontanelles. We'll get into those later. Now the diarthroses, there's a lot of examples, and they're pretty easy to manage because you do these all the time when you're walking or running or throwing a ball or whichever. So the best way I could explain where we're going to start off with is this. Pencil and paper. All right? Now, this is a bone and that's a bone. So we have the paper and the pencil as bones. Where they touch is an articulation. Okay? That's our starting point right now. Now we could do different things. We could have this glide like this, where the pencil stays perpendicular and it's just gliding on the paper itself. That's called a gliding joint. Okay? And we usually see that where the clavicle meets with the sternum or chest plate. It kind of glides over that. Okay? We also have, if we put this back up here, we could take this pencil and leave the articulation there, but we could bend the pencil. So the pencil becomes angular. Does that make sense? Okay? So this is angular. And this is more like your elbow, your knee joint, right? It's got a little angle that's going on there. Still, yeah, you can't move it in all directions, but that's a big range of motion that you're doing over there. So it's synovial. Then we have a cousin to it called a saddle joint. A saddle joint is kind of shaped like this, where it's going to, like a person's going to go over a saddle, putting legs over the saddle, like, okay? And this is what's happening with that. All right, a good example is our thumb doing that, the opposable thumb, touching that thumb to that pinky. Okay. We could also take this and do some circumduction, where it just goes like this. So the point of the pencil and the papers don't move, but the pencil is going to go around like this. That's our ball and socket joint that we see with our hip. Also rotator cuff, like what we're doing with our shoulder. Okay? So we have the ball and socket that happens over here. And we also have a cousin to it called the ellipsoid, which doesn't give you that much range motion that you got on your shoulder. But it's, see, it's the socket portion is not so deep. When you compare it to the one I just showed you, it's much deeper. You put a whole ball in there. Does that make sense? So they're similar to each other. So they kind of put them in the same situation. Okay? And then you got rotational, which is basically the pencil and the paper are touching, but then you're just turning this. Does that make sense? And that's a good example is simply shaking your head no. Okay? And that's what's happening with that. We also have a little bit happening in our forearm too. Alright? So questions about that? Synovial, there's a lot into it. We'll get into, when we get into bones, we'll talk a little bit more about, so we can talk about parts of the bones and what they do. Alright? Questions on that? Alright. So let me do the anatomy of the synovial joint. Now I'm going to list parts of a synovial joint, but then I'll show you the picture and it'll make more sense. So let me define everything first. And I'll draw something up here too. Alright, so you have tendons and ligaments. Again, tendons connect muscles to bones. Ligaments connect bones to bones. And I always showed you my mnemonic is like a muscle being very tense. So tendons, muscle to bone. In a synovial joint, we have the two bones here. We have our articular cartilage that's over here that we've been talking about on the two ends. We also have the synovial cavity. So there's going to be a cavity in here, and what will be found in there is synovial fluid. The synovial fluid is going to aid for lubrication and also to decrease friction and also to decrease heat, because as you keep on moving that, it's going to produce heat. So the liquid in there will keep down the heat somewhat. Now we also have other parts located in the joints. Now not every synovial joint has all these structures, but the knee joint does. So let's just talk about the knee joint. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So we have tendons of a quadricep. Okay. So we have. This is going to be our right leg, and you're looking at the anterior view. Okay? We're going to have our femur over here, which is your thigh bone. So this will be your femur. Okay? And then you're going to have our this is our tibia, which is basically our shin bone. Hold on. Okay, so this is what we call our tibia. And then on the lateral aspect, I'm just trying to draw this as best as I could too. And then on the lateral aspect, you're going to have another bone over here, thinner one, and that's called our fibula. Yes. Okay. Now we're going to have a tendon, and the patella is going to sit right in front of it, the kneecap. But I'm going to draw it away, otherwise it's going to obscure what I'm going to draw there. But you're going to have tendons of the quadriceps muscle. The quadriceps muscle is going to be here, anterior to the femur, and it extends further as a tendon and attaches to the patella. All right? Muscle to bone. It has to be a tendon. And you'll see the pictures. Then we also have bursa. Bursa is going to be small pockets that's filled with synovial fluid, and they tend to form in areas where tendons or ligaments will rub against other, like bones, okay? And it reduces the friction. So what we have over here is that if we have a ligament here, and a ligament here, again, bone to bone, it's got to be a ligament. Well, I kind of drew it out of scale, but this really would be pressed right against the bone, would it not? So we're going to put bursa that's located here and maybe over here, here and over here. This is going to have, it's just a little pocket synovial fluid, so that when you bend your knee, the ligament is not going to ride on the bone itself and make it thinner, causing trauma to it. It's going to ride on the bursa. It's like a shock absorber, so to say. So there won't be any friction between the ligament onto the bone. Does that make sense? Then we got fat pads. And it's going to protect the articular cartilage, and it acts as packaging material. You know how if you want to mail a vase to Aunt Tilly in California, you can't just throw the vase in a box. You got to throw the vase in a box and put a lot of those styrofoam kind of peanuts, packaging peanuts. Does that make sense? So that it won't go all the way around. So if there's spaces here, we're going to put these little fat pads located in here. There's a space there, there's a space over there, there's a space there. So that it's not going to be an area where there's going to be some open spaces. Okay? Then we have meniscus. A meniscus is a fibrous cartilage pad that's going to be on top of the articular cartilage. So we have articular cartilage here and articular cartilage here, right? You know about that from before. We're going to have a meniscus that's going to be, should be flatter, but there should be one over here and one over here. And it's a pad between, well, actually, do a little bit better. Here and here. And when you look down on it, they're actually C-shaped pads, and you'll see the pictures. So it's kind of a cushion between these two areas here. And then you have something where you probably already heard about, the ACL. But now we get to know what the ACL stands for. Okay? Let me just see something really fast. Okay. The ACL is the anterior cruciate ligament. And basically, it's a ligament that's going to go from here over to here. And it's anterior. There's another one behind there, and that's called the PCL. And it kind of goes this way behind the ACL this way. I don't know if you can see it, but that's what it's doing. So the purple here is the anterior cruciate ligament. It's anterior. The orange over here is the posterior cruciate ligament. They call it cruciate like a crucifixion. It's crossing over like an X. All right, it makes sense. It's going from bone to bone, so it's got to be a ligament. Okay? You also have two other ligaments that I already drew for you before. This purple one here and this purple one over here. This one is on the medial aspect, right? This is medial, this is lateral. It's your right leg. So the other leg is over here. You're looking at it. This is called the medial collateral ligament. It's on the medial aspect. We sometimes call this the tibial collateral ligament because it connects to the tibia. This one over here is called the lateral collateral. I know it sounds weird, but lateral collateral ligament, or also known as the lateral fibular ligament. Okay, so far so good? No, it's lateral. It's Oh yeah, you're right, absolutely, yeah. Sorry. All right. So it's either the medial collateral ligament or tibial collateral ligament, or it's the lateral collateral ligament or the fibular collateral ligament. No, you can use either or. Yep, you can use either or. That's why I put them up there. Just don't, you can't, tibial collateral ligament and lateral collateral ligament are not the same thing. Okay? So far so good? Alright, now let's show you pictures. Alright? Again, this is the right leg. Same thing I drew up there. Here's the tibia, here's the fibula. This is what it really is supposed to look like. There's the patella. We kind of removed the patella on over there so you can see stuff behind it. Here's the tendon going from the quadriceps muscle to the kneecap, or the patella. Okay? You see bursa in there. Let's remove the kneecap. See the kneecap over here? Now you can see things inside. Okay? Now, the other thing that could get a little confusing on here is, whoa, where did that come from? Because it didn't look like that over here. So here's the person standing up. Now I'm going to sit down. So my leg is bent in a 90 degree. And I'm going to remove the patella. So what I'm looking at here is the inferior border of the femur. You're looking at the bottom of the femur. Does that make sense? Because he's bent forward, so his femur is going right through the board over here. It's parallel to the floor. Whereas the tibia is perpendicular to the floor. You see what I'm saying? You got to visualize that. All right? There's where the meniscus is. We have a lateral meniscus. We have a medial meniscus. And like I said, it's more like a C-shaped pad. We also have the anterior, I kind of drew it wrong. It should be that way. Backwards. Right? Yeah. So the anterior goes this way, ACL goes this way, and the PCL goes that way. Similar, minor thing, but trying to be precise. So we have the anterior cruciate ligament going this way, and posterior going back that way. Okay? So far so good? You could also see the lateral collateral ligament, the medial collateral ligament. This attaches to the tibia, this attaches to the fibula. Alright? Again, you can see over here the menisci on either side here. There's the ACL and PCL. This, what you're looking at is, you're looking at the superior portion of the tibia. I'm looking down at my tibia, the top of the tibia. There's the meniscus, the lateral meniscus, the medial meniscus. Fibula is up here, and you can see where it's cut the ACL. Questions on that so far? Right? Again, the person's knee is bent. So here's the inferior portion of the femur. There's the ACL, PCL going that way. The lateral collateral ligament, the medial collateral ligament in green over here. All right, you can see the meniscus, lateral meniscus there, medial meniscus there. Questions so far? Okay. Now, who here has heard someone, or you heard something on TV, someone tore their ACL? Majority, right? But where have you ever heard someone tear their PCL? That can happen. But why do we have a lot more people tearing, if they're going to tear one, we hear ACLs being torn, not PCLs, because of where they're getting hit. And a good example of this is football. Okay? Here you're looking at the left leg. So here's the lateral side, there's the medial side. Okay? Now usually what happens here is that someone gets hit on the lateral side. How often does someone get hit on the medial side? It's being protected by the other leg. It can happen, I guess in a fumble or whatever, but usually they get hit laterally. And what happens here is that when this happens, and I'm going to exaggerate it so you can see what's going on, what happens here is that this bone and this bone kind of bend that way. I'm going to exaggerate it for you. It's going to do this kind of movement. And the football, the guy with the football is going that way. Does that make sense? It's going to make like an arrow going that way. So what happens is that there's more pressure on this side. If I do this, if I put a rubber band over here, attach it here, if it bends this way, it's going to get loose, does it not? You bend it this way, it's going to stretch until it tears. Does that make sense? It's where the pressure goes. So usually, the way the pressure is, you can see with the ACL, it's more pressure going that way. If the bones do go that way, it's going to tear that. But it's going to be pretty lax on the PCL. Likewise, the lateral collateral ligament, the fibular collateral ligament, won't get damaged as much, even though you got hit on that side. But this is where there's going to be more compromise, more stress. So usually, depending on how bad the hit is on the lateral side, they will usually tear a few things because of the way the stress is. The ACL is torn, the medial meniscus usually gets torn, and the medial or tibial collateral ligament gets torn because of the way the force happens. The other ones kind of get spared because of that. The only way to destroy the other side is you got to get hit that way, and you got to, I mean, it can happen, I understand that, but it's not so common. Does that make sense, everybody? Questions about that? All right, so this is just kind of showing you superior portion. There's where meniscus gets torn. See it over there? All right? Yeah.
How would you treat like a torn ACL?
Depends on how bad it is. If they got to sew it up, if it's really torn like completely, or there could be physical therapy that happens. Let it heal by itself, but they have to do certain kind of movements, exercise to make certain muscles stronger to allow the healing process to occur better.
So it is fixable?
I'm sorry?
It is fixable? Like...
Yeah, it's fixable, yeah. But I don't know, I mean, I guess if you're an NFL football player, I mean, you know, they'll pay him, you know, they'll pay the doctor like an obnoxious amount of money to get him back on the field. But in high school, if you tore your ACL, I mean, it depends on how bad it is, you know, your career is kind of gone. You know, it depends on how, if it's severed, but, you know, I would take up hunting or fishing, you know, golf. Even golf could be pretty bad, you know, especially if you have to get that ball, you know, in that windmill, you know what I'm saying? That, you know what I'm saying? You know, the way you got to twist your lip. So questions about that?